Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. My name is Christy Lockhart, and I am the Executive Coordinator for the Global Wellness Summit and Institute. Welcome to the Rise of Neurowellness Masterclass. Please feel free to introduce yourself in the chat. As Nancy said, let us know where you're joining us from. Some quick logistics. Feel free to choose between gallery or speaker view, and please keep yourself on mute throughout the webinar. We will mute you now. It is my pleasure to introduce Nancy Davis, Chief Creative Officer and Executive Director.
Thank you, Christy, and thank you for fixing the whatever is going on with Zoom. Welcome everyone to this extraordinary masterclass with some extraordinary guests and a fabulous topic, neurowellness. When we released our 2026 Future of Wellness Trends report in January of this year, we had a hunch that the trend on neurowellness would get people's attention, and it has. The media has written about it, the wellness world has embraced it, and we see it as an important arena central to the ongoing conversations about wellness writ large. We also have almost 1,300 people registered, and hopefully they will show up to this masterclass, further evidence of the interest in this topic. Whenever we tackle a subject, we do it from the point of view of evidence, rigorous science, a view to the future, and a focus on humanity. So in the next hour, you can expect to learn about the new frontier of neurowellness, hear from some of the leading voices in that sector, and gain an understanding of how neurowellness will impact everything in our lives. A little bit about our guests. Beth McGroarty, Vice President for Research and Forecasting at the Global Wellness Summit and Global Wellness Institute, is the trends guru. Beth has led our trends reports for decades. She has a unique and powerful voice in the industry, one respected and relied on by media and moguls alike. Beth will help frame neurowellness in the pantheon of trends we've covered and help us understand why this just may be neurowellness's moment. Heidi Moon, Vice President for Marketing and Communications at the Summit and Institute, wrote the neurowellness trend. Heidi knew in her gut that this was a hugely important topic that deserved investigation. She delved deep and will help us understand why neurowellness may very well reshape everything. Heidi's trend highlighted several innovators, and two of them are here with us today. Meredith Perry is co-founder and CEO of Elemind, a company developing wearable neurotechnology designed to deliver the benefits of pharmaceuticals without chemicals or side effects. We love that. While at UPenn, she worked with NASA on life detection technology, zero gravity experiments, and astrobiology research. Povilas Sabaliauskas is founder of Pulsetto, a neuromodulation company focused on making vagus nerve stimulation accessible for everyday mental health, stress, and sleep. Inspired by a personal search to help his father, he built early solutions that evolved into a global platform. We are also privileged to have with us Susan Magsamen, the founder and executive director of the International Arts and Mind Lab Center for Applied Neuroaesthetics at Johns Hopkins University School of Medicine, where she also serves as assistant professor of neurology. A pioneer at the intersection of brain science and the arts, she is co-author with Ivy Ross of the New York Times bestseller, Your Brain on Art: How the Arts Transform Us. She co-directs the NeuroArts Blueprint Initiative in partnership with the Aspen Institute and is author of the Impact Thinking Model. I told you, an amazing, amazing group of guests. So let's get started. First up, the Oracle herself, Beth McGroarty. Beth?
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about why now? What's fueling the interest, do you think, in neurowellness?
Yeah. So I think why neurowellness and nervous system regulation is actually blowing up is that our human nervous system is simply not designed for modern life. and it's only getting worse. We've had 2 decades of nonstop digital stimulation, work without boundaries, the constant whiplash of the next daily bad news cycle, spawning disinformation, terrifying climate events, global unrest, division and war, all this ratcheting up people's fears about AI's threats to their work, to the undoing of reality. So, I've been studying global survey after survey revealing that what this era of multi-crises is doing to people's brains. So Gallup's latest data, recent data on 144 countries, reveals people are experiencing significantly more stress and negative emotions than they were a decade ago. On any given day, 40% of global people globally experience high anxiety, 26% report sadness, 22% report anger. Global burnout is at an all-time high at work. Um, the APA's latest Stress in America survey reveals that what Americans say is driving this surging stress. 62% say it's societal division, 69% the spread of inaccurate information, 57% the rise of AI. But so beneath all this stress and burnout, we all know about this, lies a deeper, real physiological issue, which is that people's nervous systems are dysregulated. They're perma-stuck in fight or flight mode. So we're a population struggling to return to baseline. So if wellness's OG focus was stress reduction, people's needs have really moved beyond those sporadic and reactive fixes. So I think this is why proactive, everyday regulating of the nervous system really does feel like the next frontier in wellness. And as someone who follows wellness in the media every single day, I can say that people are fixated on nervous system regulation. It's blowing up on TikTok. And sure, it's the new flex, So sorry, the world's on fire, but I'm out of pocket regulating my nervous system. You see this all over the internet. But it's really a hot topic and is striking a deep and a very grassroots chord. I think there's a deep culture-wide sense that life has become destabilizing and people are now really open to new solutions. And I think it's striking that the wellness world really hasn't met this need before. It's striking to me how delayed the new solutions feel. And I think that's because, as our other trend, the over-optimization backlash argues, that's because so much of recent wellness culture has revolved around discipline and hyper-optimization. So the rise in neurowellness is a key part of a bigger macro shift that's underway. This is away from stressful optimization towards relief, resilience, regulation, and restoring connection to the body. It's about downshifting. It's about bioharmonization over biohacking. So the emerging paradigm we're seeing, we have some great guests today in wellness tech, and exemplified by this new neurotech. It doesn't push, score, or correct the body, it regulates it. So we're seeing so many tools prioritizing nervous system calm and recovery over performance metrics. I feel like a new neurotech startup raises venture capital every week or two now. I think just the last point, another connection to the broader wellness market is that if longevity has recently completely rewritten the space, we're now seeing a distinct shift in the longevity conversation towards brain health. So the new focus is brain span and neuro longevity. These are the years of optimal brain function. A recent Milken Institute report explains that while life expectancy just climbs and climbs, the years that people spend with cognitive impairment is increasing. So neurowellness is moving to the center of the industry in health because people are living longer, but not with healthy brains.
Beth, that was amazing. Thank you so much. So much to unpack there, and we will get to this as this webinar continues. Right now, I'm going to turn to Heidi Moon, author of The Trend on Neurowellness, to tell us about the newest wellness center, which is the brain. Heidi, over to you.
Hi, everybody. I am just so thrilled to be here and to see such this topic resonate with so many. As Beth said, we've been watching this trend for well over 3 years now, talking about possibly including it. And as Beth said, it's kind of amazing that it's taken this long, but it certainly is the moment. And for me, it's deeply personal too, because I'm the daughter of a neuroscientist who was the head of Barrow's Neurological Institute for a while. And of a mom who always knew, just wisdom-wise, that energy follows thought and there was a mind-body connection and all that stuff. So really exciting to be here. We coined this term neurowellness at this moment in time to capture the idea that all of this neuroscience that we've had for so long is now being moved to not just treat pathologies and issues, but rather to be applied to prevention, performance, and lifestyle. So before we get into where this is going, I'm going to start with something really simple, a little anatomy, because it's really key to understand why this is so important and kind of to put in context the innovations that we're going to be talking about. The nervous system has two main areas: the central nervous system, the brain and spinal cord, and the peripheral nervous systems, carrying signals between the brain and the rest of the body. All of the neuro wellness stuff that we're going to be talking about is all kind of in the peripheral nervous system. And within that, there's two parts of the peripheral nervous system: the somatic, that controls voluntary actions like movement and posture, and when we decide to control our breath, and the autonomic, which is all the involuntary actions. This is where you see a lot of the neurotech innovations being applied. It's a part that it controls heart rate, digestion, sleep, hormones, all of that. And for years, the peripheral nervous system has the somatic and the autonomic. And the autonomic system has two modes: the fight or flight and rest and recovery. And for years, these systems worked great. The threat appeared, all that kind of went into fight or flight mode, into action. And then when the threat passed, we went into rest and recovery mode. It worked swimmingly. But now the threat doesn't come and go. It's our background noise, the notifications, news cycles, artificial light, work without boundaries. It's all around us. And we don't know that our bodies don't know the difference between the threat of a lion and just a notification dinging on our phone. And the key tool in all of that anatomy to deal with the shift between fight or flight mode and recovery is the vagus nerve. And that's the central of the kind of peripheral nervous system. And so the vagus nerve is the longest nerve in the body, running from the base of the brain through the neck into the heart, lungs, and gut. We've heard all of the stuff about gut science and mind-body connection to the gut. A lot of new research on that, and this is where the vagus nerve comes in. When the vagus nerve is active, it sends a powerful message to the body that you are safe. Heart rate slows, digestion improves, inflammation markers drop, sleep deepens, repair begins. The problem is most bodies aren't getting that signal. We don't know the difference between that one-time threat and the chronic threats that are all around us. And this is why neural wellness is exploding. And it's not just about mental health or brain health or some kind of pathology. You can see that neuro wellness is about whole body health. And it's whole body health via regulation, training the nervous system to shift from that fight or flight mode back into recovery mode. And the nervous system is really the master switch. You flip it and everything changes. And what has changed now? Why now? Wearables have made the invisible visible. You've heard, what's your sleep score? When you put a number on your stress, people start to care about it and want to do something about it. So sleep has become this gateway drug to neurowellness. And that's why tools like Aura and Whoop and 8 Sleep, this AI kind of tool that combines a lot of different neurotech, that was a huge hit at CES. And Elemind, I mentioned at the press event that I think this is the sleep headband is going to be the new eye mask, and we have the founder with us today, excited to get more information from her. So the future of sleep isn't just tracking, it's regulation. And this is a framework for us to understand kind of the different solutions that are popping up and the solutions that we've had forever, understanding the science behind it. We have those somatic approaches that have been around forever: breath work, Feldenkrais, cathartic release movement, like with Sanctum, this wonderful class that we do at all of our summits. And then we also have the autonomic focus solutions. And this is the other founder that we have with us today. Hopefully, if you can get into the webinar, is the founder of Pulsetto. And this is a vagus nerve stimulation device that's been brought into kind of consumer awareness. And we see a lot of other vagus nerve stimulation approaches, such as Sensate, some crossing between kind of wellness and healthcare, like Gamma Core. And then recently, last fall, Flow Neuroscience had their neuromodulation device approved to treat anxiety and depression with healthcare coverage. So this is going to be a really exciting new area. We also see some hybrid approaches like the Advanced Brain Monitoring Stat X24, the Yojo, that's really kind of crossing, bringing not just the monitoring with you, but it crosses over into neuromodulation and AI-empowered kind of personalization, life coaching via an app. And we also see this popping up in actually brain health clinics. People going to, instead of just going to a spa or a yoga class, people going to a brain health clinic for preventative wellness treatment, kind of upstream of pathology. So we have radio clinics. We see destination spas like Shaw Wellness Clinic has a wonderful brain health program that not only kind of gets into treating things like cognitive therapies, but also in the prevention realm. And what I'm excited to talk about later with Susan is how we start seeing this show up, not just in a technology, in a device, in a somatic approach, but how it's starting to be infused into our environments, like what's happening at Six Senses and a new development in the Middle East, the Wilds by Aldar. And what we're going to be talking about for the rest of this master class is honing in on these kind of three key areas: that kind of EEG sensing, what's available now in neurotech, to what devices are available and kind of where that plays in. We'll talk about the vagus nerve stimulation and the opportunities there, and whether it's in hospitality and consumer retail opportunities, as well as the crossover into mental health therapies. And then with Susan and the team, we'll be talking about how this is now becoming ambient, how we see the future in neuroaesthetics, and how neuroscience is creeping into the design of everything around us.
Thank you, Heidi. It's all incredibly fascinating, and I love that that was part anatomy class and part, sort of future thinking. It's wonderful. And you're right. I mean, your trend is so deep and touches so many different areas. So it'll be really fun to unpack that as this trend goes on. Welcome to those who have joined us. Our fault, a little late, or Zoom's fault. Appreciate that you're here. And the recording of this is going to be available to everybody and everyone who registered. So this will have life well beyond this hour. You mentioned technologies, Heidi, impacting the brain and the nervous system, and you invited to this conversation two people making their own waves in the field. And first up, let's welcome Meredith Perry to tell us about non-pharmaceutical interventions that help with focus, sleep, and more. Meredith, if you would unmute and say hello.
Hi, everybody. I'm Meredith Perry. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Elemind. It's really nice to be here. Thank you for having me. We've created wearable neurotechnology in the form of a comfortable headband, which I've got right here, that can both read and write to the brain. So let's talk about what that means just briefly. So the brain is like the mainframe of the body. And if we can change the brain, you can change behavior. And, we looked at this back in 2019, this world of pharmaceuticals, this world of pharmaceuticals where every single drug that you would take would have some sort of side effect. That's what happens. It has to go through your bloodstream and hits everything along the way and does whatever it needs to do. And those are called off-target effects. We like to say that SSRIs aren't useful in your toes, but they end up there anyway. Anyway, so we wanted to find a way where we could impact the brain physically or electrically as opposed to chemically, so that we could have the benefits of a pharmaceutical without the side effects of drugs. Enter Elemind. So what we do is we read your brain in real time. So we read your brain waves. The brain is an electrochemical organ, as Heidi mentioned, and different brain activity or different brain states are measured by brain waves, which we can measure with something called EEG. So we've got all these sensors here around the headband, and we can pick up on that brain activity from those sensors. So it's like an EKG for the heart, but instead we're reading the brain. And instead of just reading, so, we talked about Whoop and Oura Ring and all these other devices that are doing a great job of tracking, but they're not actively changing the brain. They're not changing the body. They're giving you, they're a mirror to what's happening, but they're not actually doing anything. And that's where Elemind is different. We can read and write. So we can not only read what's happening in the body, but we can change it. And our first application is around sleep. So why sleep? For a number of different reasons, sleep is incredibly important to your health. It's a massive pillar of health and wellness that is often forgotten. But yet, if you don't have it, you really don't have the rest of your health. But also, when we're looking at the brain over the course of sleep, it's an uninterrupted, typically 8 hours of time where we can record and look at the rest of the brain. So when we think about neuro-wellness, there's a paper that just came out in Nature about 2 months ago that showed from a single night of sleep, that data can actually predict about 100 plus diseases. So sleep is a huge window into the health and wellness of the brain. Nancy, Heidi, how much time do I have? I don't want to take up.
Take a couple more minutes there, Meredith. This time
okay.
We'll come back to you too.
Okay, I have like an endless amount of stuff to say here. So with sleep, how do we do this? So we read the brain in real time, and then we stimulate the brain in response to what we read with sound pulses to guide the brain to sleep. So when I say that sleep is our first application, what we're doing is we're helping people fall asleep rapidly, fall back to sleep rapidly, and then coming up in a few months, actually, we're going to be enhancing deep sleep. So how do we do this? This is all sound. This is all using sound. And since the brain is an electrochemical organ, we can make use of sound, just pulses of sound, to generate what's called an auditory evoked response to interact with the rest of the brain. And as we go from an awake state to a sleep state, naturally, our brain is naturally shifting from high frequency brain waves, which are called alpha, to lower frequency theta as we start to fall asleep, and then even lower frequency delta waves as we're in deep sleep. And what Elemind does is at the point where you're awake, but you want to go to sleep, you see a dominant frequency of around 10 hertz. It's called alpha. And we measure that in real time using these EEG sensors. And every time we see a certain part of that wave, let's call it the peak of your alpha wave, we will send a sound pulse to effectively cancel out your alpha waves, the brain waves associated with wakefulness. You can think about it like noise cancellation for the brain. And when we can help cancel out the brain waves associated with wakefulness, people fall asleep significantly faster. In fact, 76% of people in our clinical trial fell asleep in roughly half the time, with our best performers falling asleep. 70.
Wow. That's a perfect place to pause now. That's absolutely amazing. And is it connected to phones? And is that how you track it? You get the data and the information after? We're not taking questions. If you would put questions in the chat, that would be great. But Meredith, is it connected to an app? Is that how you learn what the scores are and what you've done and everything?
So all the computation is actually done on the device itself. So we read the brain.
Okay, great.
But if people want to view their data, that can be viewed on a paired app.
Okay, wonderful. Gosh, amazing. And this is all available now?
Yes.
just to be clear. Okay, incredible. Absolutely incredible. Okay, do we, Heidi, do we know if Povilas is on the call?
I
Povilas, are you on the call? If you are, unmute and say hello.
we've been emailing and I think he is on or coming on. Maybe we come back to
Okay,
him.
I'm going to come back to Povilas in a minute, but I'm going to go to Susan. So we've been talking about cultural shifts impacting neurowellness. We're talking about companies that are leading science and technology into the masses. So now we have to ask ourselves, how can we take this information, this science, and apply it to designing the world around us? Enter Susan Magsamen. Susan is a force, working across disciplines, forging partnerships and collaborations, and waking the world to the power of art. This is near and dear to my heart, and I'm thrilled that the Global Wellness Institute is partnering with Susan on a year-long project, a design challenge, which we announced at our media event in January. Susan and Ivy Ross, her co-author, will provide an update on this project at the Wellness Real Estate and Community Symposium in May in New York City. And then we will present the award to the winning team at the 20th Anniversary Global Wellness Summit in Thailand this November. So if you're counting, that's 3 shameless plugs for our events. Please now enjoy the wisdom and heart of this incredible leader, an advocate, deep thinker, brilliant creator, and very recently a grandmother again, this time to a perfect little girl, my colleague and friend, Susan Magsamen.
Well, Nancy, first of all, no pressure. I buddy Norwood Creech coming up here. Hello, Norwood. I'm going to go ahead and share a couple slides to just frame some of my thinking for this conversation today. And I am super excited to be here and really, really looking forward to the discussion. But just to level set a little bit, first of all, this is an amazing conversation and it is so timely. I feel like, wow, how we all have sort of come together here to do something really special. And, you know, when Beth was talking about this idea of sort of disconnection and discord, I think we've all been feeling that on an individual level and not quite being able to get things straight, really kind of move into homeostasis. And as I listen to sort of all of the soup that we've been swimming in, I kind of feel like, okay, we're in this together and we've got to figure it out together. And that gives me a lot of hope. Wanted to just share that my work at Johns Hopkins is as a co-founder of the International Arts and Mind Lab, and we work in an interdisciplinary way from research to practice. Our mission is to amplify human potential through the arts and aesthetic experiences. So I'm going to talk today mostly about intentional spaces, but we're bought in on any art form in any way. And the way I define arts are creative expression and thinking about them in terms of prevention, intervention, and practice as ways to really moderate the nervous system, but also how to really amplify our potential and really to thrive. So neuroaesthetics is the field that I work in. And I like to say, while philosophers and artists have always known, children have always known the power of the arts, it's really only been in the last 30 years that we've been not able to non-invasively get inside our heads. And I think you're seeing now that AI and data science is enhancing that. But the definition of neuroaesthetics is the study of how the arts and aesthetic experiences measurably change our brain's body and behavior, and how this knowledge gets translated into practices that advance health, well-being, learning, public health. So it is by its very nature interdisciplinary, and it's also translational. Neuroarts is the interdisciplinary field that's rooted in the science of neuroaesthetics. And this work is really being driven by work that I'm doing with the Aspen Institute called the NeuroArts Blueprint Initiative. And this initiative is now entering into its 5th year. And what I want to tell you about this is that this work is really building a sustainable field where neurotech where neurophysiology, where all of these different ways that we are modifying what it means to be human are coming together. And we'll be having a conference in December in Washington, D.C. at the Bloomberg Center at Johns Hopkins to really look at where we have come in the last 5 years in this neuro wellness space. But I think more importantly, where this work is going and where that's going collectively. So this just shows you sort of this integration of arts, health, science, technology equals neuroarts. And technology is an amazing catalyst here in all of the different forms that we're already talking about. But what we used to talk about the arts being a nice to have, a luxury. It's really been in this last 20 years that we're starting to see tremendous peer review work in neuroaesthetics in multiple disciplines with multiple art forms for multiple reasons. And I think that's really important because that was not true. This work has traditionally not been funded by federal funding. It's primarily been funded by philanthropy and other kinds of investments. That's changing. And that's really important because the research is really essential. But one of the things that I want to double down on is that the scientific evidence is very clear. We now know that the arts and aesthetics alter simultaneously complex physiological and neurobiological networks like respiration, circulatory systems, muscular systems, and they do it at the same time. So there is this amazing opportunity to think about this work as impacting our brains and bodies literally like no other kinds of neuromodulators. So it gives us an amazing opportunity of a periodic table of opportunities to use in health and well-being and other parts of humanity. Neurobiology is important, but that's not the only thing that's important. This idea around ways of knowing is something that I want to lift up, and only to say that it's really by understanding ancestral knowledge, understanding lived experience, understanding the artistic practice and the scientific work that we really have a true lens on how we think about solution science and solving some of the most intractable problems that have already been mentioned. Just a primer in terms of what we're talking about here is neuroplasticity. And I'm going to move now to talk a bit about the way that spaces change us. But to lift that up, I want to tell a quick story about Marion Diamond, who in the 60s understood that enriched environments changed us. So when we had enriched environments, our brain's mass grew by as much as 6%. We had greater myelination. In status quo spaces, nothing changed. In impoverished spaces, our brains deteriorated. And we now are only now beginning to apply this work in serious ways to understand the enormous power of the spaces and places that we live in. And that's really important because the way that our brains function are by taking in these sensorial experiences, these organs that are so powerful to create salient experiences, and for those salient experiences to impact the vagus nerve, to impact the amygdala, to impact that ancient part of our brain that ties into the central nervous system, that ties into the peripheral nervous system. So all of this work now around neurophysiology, neurobiology, the role of sensory systems and what becomes salient to us now starts to lay the groundwork for how we apply this work. And so I love this quote. It's by Jill Bolte Taylor. Most of us think of ourselves as thinking creatures that feel, but we're actually feeling creatures that think. And when you think about that, we have over 34,000 different feelings that any human has access to if we're able to tap into them. Yet at the same time, we're only conscious of about 5% of the information that's really coming into our bodies. So several years ago, my lab launched something called the Intentional Spaces Initiative. And the idea was to really go deep in understanding the way that spaces and places change us. And we're always in a space. We're in our space in our head, we're in virtual reality, we're in immersive experiences, we're in physical spaces. And we brought together 300 experts from around the world and identified 10 key themes around the future of intentional spaces. And that generated a roadmap that really looks at how to align efforts to build the intentional spaces field in sectors and disciplines, and how to provide direction for implementing this work, for investing in this work, and creating policies. and also for advancing intentional design as a driver for human health, equity, and well-being. And so the roadmap really lays out sort of 5 core recommendations, and then takes those recommendations and creates initiatives that are actionable initiatives. And so I won't go into the initiatives during this part of our conversation, but I just want to illustrate here the sort of dogma, the theory of change, is that we have scientific inputs that come from multiple ways of knowing, as I mentioned. Those inputs are now being used to translate into design. That could be product design. That could be thinking about sensory optimization of environments, such as sleep, or even thinking about the role of home versus workplace versus the way we live in community, how we think about building healthy buildings, which there's such a great opportunity to think more deeply about that. And even human-centered layouts. What does that mean in all the different places that we are? And then really importantly, not just the function of those spaces, but the feeling of those spaces. What are the spatial outcomes that are important to optimize human potential? So right back to where I started. So what does it mean to lower stress in an environment? What does it mean to be more attentive in an environment? What does it mean to be more empathetic in an environment? What does it mean to really rest and restore? Or what does it mean to increase productivity or collaboration? How do spaces allow us to do that? So let me stop there, and I'm excited to come back to talk more about some of the really exciting projects that are happening in this space.
Susan, thank you so much. This obviously this entire conversation is lighting up the chat. People are very, very excited about what everyone has to say. Is Povilas, are you on the call? Heidi, do you know if he got on? You're muted.
I asked him to ping me as soon as he is on. I don't see him.
Okay.
So
Okay.
we'll cut to him hopefully before the end when he can jump in.
Okay, so one of the things that is certainly clear here, and certainly clear through what Susan was talking about and what we've all been talking about, is this sort of cross-disciplinary, interdisciplinary, collaborative environment ecosystem for all of this. I get very, very excited when I hear about this, because I know it overlaps a lot of the work that we do in all of the spaces we're in. This has to do with hospitality. It has to do with the built environment. It's spaces, it's science, it's medical, it's all of it. Heidi, I wonder if you would, and maybe Beth jump in, and Jane, who's on the call as well, talk about where all of this fits in the sort of real estate hospitality spaces mode in the wellness world. A lot of people are on the call who work in that world. Might you offer a thought or two there?
Yeah, I'll start, and then I think I'm going to pass it over to Jane, who dove deep in her longevity residences trend, and also has visited a lot of the places that I mentioned in the trend. So I think, just as you mentioned, Nancy, I think when we think about the future of the space, two exciting things. On one hand, I love to see the FDA approvals and the HSA coverage, and how, and it's not just in the US, but in Europe and the UK and other places in the world, that's going to just make this technology really available to people. But as we heard from Susan, and the more exciting kind of bigger impact of this trend, I think, is as it will be built into spaces. And, so I mentioned a few places, but we saw on the tour around Doha, around Dubai, we saw a couple really interesting developments. Ciro, we saw the Six Senses of the Palm, Aldar, which I mentioned, but also, throughout Asia, where we're going this year for our Global Wellness Summit, there's some really amazing properties that are developing neuro-wellness solutions kind of integrated into the spaces. And with that, maybe Jane, I'll turn it over to you to talk about some of the programs you've seen and some of the spaces you've visited that bring this to life.
Sure. Thank you, Heidi, and thank you, Susan, and thank you, Meredith. This is like just a really, really exciting, well, it's such an exciting trend, but it's just been really great to have a chance to dive deep in this webinar. Yeah, so I think we're seeing a lot of in terms of hospitality, bringing this into to a sort of wellness lens. So lots of places. I think Heidi mentioned right at the beginning, Shaw Wellness in Spain and also in Mexico, and they're also building a new location in the UAE. They've got a whole cognitive boost pack that you can add to programs. They have, one of the things about Shaw is it's overseen by medical professionals. So they've got neuroscientists who work there at their clinics. And they can do things, anything from like people worrying about, am I at risk of developing dementia to people just wanting to kind of boost their brain health. We've also seen in Thailand, Kamalaya recently launched this cognitive house, which is like a purpose-built center that's all about brain diagnostics and optimization. These are all kind of leaders in the space as well. Places like Clinique Perry has a brain enhancement program. Again, that's looking at cognitive health, rejuvenation, and they do 7-day packages there, and include things like medical diagnostics, MRI, CT scans, and then alongside things like cognitive assessments, psychology sessions.
And Jane, are any of them involving art and the arts, to Susan's point, and to the, kind of thing that we're working on with Johns Hopkins and all kinds of partners who were recently at a wonderful meeting that I had the privilege to attend. The idea of bringing arts into this conversation for the brain, for brain health, for brain wellness. Have you seen that yet? Or are we right at the, sort of cutting edge of this where we can have some impact into that world?
Yeah, it's interesting. I've definitely seen sort of a rise of creative arts within wellness settings, right? So things like, painting or any kind of crafts, anything you're doing with your hands, things like that, that I think people have realized that it kind of creates a sort of naturally mindful state, right? So, but whether or not, I can't think of anyone that's necessarily billing that in a kind of neuro wellness way.
I think
Susan, have you had any people come to you about this? What's your experience of this?
Yeah, I mean, I think what I was sharing with neuro arts is that this field is coalescing and it's multiple kinds of sectors. So you can think about prevention and early childhood, where we know that because neuroplasticity is so great in young children, these multi-sensory experiences are really powerful for building strong synaptic connections. We're also seeing moms and babies with bonding and singing and movement, and that has great connections through oxytocin. But importantly, we're also seeing those same moms who are prone to postpartum depression not having to take the amount of medication that they would have, because they're moving and singing with their babies, and that's changing their trajectories. And that's a multi-country Scandinavian study that's been happening, and that's really exciting. We're seeing women in trauma use hand stitching to really create story cloths, and this is global, where they're really working through their trauma experiences. We all know about singing and Alzheimer's. We're seeing dance and Parkinson's programs opening up all over the world. Chemotherapy suites are using handwork or music or sound, and there's quite a number. So I think these, what I'm mentioning, some of these are more analog, but then there's a lot of digital product coming out that is looking at gait and Parkinson's, or gait and stroke, or looking at depression or anxiety, and where we're seeing these arts integrative complementary models. And I'll just add one other piece, is that the economic return on these kinds of interventions or preventions are multiples. And so we recently did a economic study with Deloitte, where initially we did one looking at one singing experience a month for someone with mild, moderate, or advanced Alzheimer's. And what we found was that with that one intervention a month over a year, there was a 3-to-1 return on investment. We went one step further and we said, well, what's the true value to society? You know, you can have individual interventions, which are fabulous. And by the way, they're immediate, affordable, and accessible. So you don't have to wait for the institutions, for spas to open. You can start doing this and move into the community. And I think they're not mutually exclusive. But with this true value economic study, what we saw was that if we only had 30% of the US population doing this one intervention, we would save $30 billion a year.
Oh.
So the return on investment to help payers and providers, and then within HR, we're also seeing tremendous interest in HR departments at corporations because of burnout, because of stress, because of anxiety, but also because of innovation and collaboration. So we're working with a lot of companies now who are thinking about what are the programs, but also what's the space. And you can't separate the two.
Beth, do you want to comment on this? Because this touches a lot of the kinds of trends that you have written about over the years. And I'm thinking of your analog trend, your return to the communities and all the things and the arts. Talk a little bit about this.
Yeah, I mean, I think arts and crafts in hospitality, in grassroots clubs, analog clubs is like the hottest trend in the world. It's outside the industry. It's more affordable. It's in some ways a threat to wellness spaces in that, especially young people, these intentional communities that are just spawning from everything from mahjong to, professorial level, intellectual, learning environments that are grassroots at bars, intellectual bars. I mean, sewing, knitting, painting, every single kind of analog craft and experience. I don't think they're being branded as neuro wellness. They're being branded as a retreat from digital hell. But I think obviously that's something that they could make a connection to. And then in the analog trend, I mean, I'm interested in this too, is, obviously, spaces in the home. So, after an era of, as I've said, smart homes where your home is like a NASA command center with like all the dashboards and sensors and biohacking hardware. Now we're seeing this like really powerful move towards the dumb home. So a home with fewer screens, without alerts.
How's this one, Beth?
Yours is there, but spaces that are deliberately devoted, a return to art, music, reading, nature, human connection. So I'm interested whether it's cities, architecture, zoning, how spatial flow is designed in cities and communities or homes, where calm is being designed as the first planning principle. So there's just, to me, that's sort of fascinating. And, big developments in New York or, luxury developments are, moving towards these analog rooms where the whole point of the space is calm, lack of digital connection, nature. So they're putting money where amenities used to be into these sort of neuro-regulating spaces. But, people call it emotional architecture. But
I
finally,
love that.
finally, like and Susan, I could ask Susan a million questions, how do you design, to regulate the nervous system, to calm, to create focus? I mean, I think people want to know the elements, the key elements that do create different emotional and nervous system states.
Susan, do you want to answer that? Do you want to have a quick, And
yes,
can you speak a little louder? You're very soft
it's
still.
very soft. Yes to everything. I think what's really amazing is that, we are wired for this human connection. And I think these analog,
Louder.
oh, sorry. I don't know what's going on with my mic, but yes, there are just at a very neurophysiological level, things like repetitive hand actions actually lowers cortisol. We know that writing in a journal not only lowers cortisol, but it creates more cognitive space, right? Because your cognitive load, now we're learning that cognitive load used to tap out at about 90 minutes. it's now tapping out between 5 and 20 minutes. And so, which means we need to renew and restore every 5 to 20 minutes, given the incoming that's happening to
I'm going to
us.
just direct you to Beth's question was a little bit more about space and designing in space, right, Beth? Can you just phrase your question again for Susan?
Well, I mean, it would be impossible for her to answer all she
Yeah,
knows.
of course.
I think everyone
Come to
knows.
the symposium. We're going to
Yes,
get a lot
exactly.
deeper in that.
Yeah, I mean, I
Office
just think
hours.
the principles of designing for calm or rest or recovery versus focus and, in workplaces. I mean, I think people know that that the physical environment has this outsized, incredible impact. But I think what's missing for a lot of people is the knowledge of how to do it.
Yep, sorry, I got off track. So yes, we know a lot about how to design for different spaces for different outcomes, but you can't reject culture and lived experience and sensory systems, which are all different from each other. And so I think this work also speaks to optimizing for society, but also for personalized spaces. So your space is going to be different than my space. And I think in the workplace and in these environments, we need to really think about what our own thumbprint is on these spaces. And so we can say curved spaces make you feel safer behind you because you're looking out at the horizon. We know certain colors neurophysiologically tie into biophilic design, but we also know that culture trumps nature. If red in the United States means stop, red in China means good luck, right? And so you have to really think about the complexities of that. And that's why lived experience in design is so important. You can't design without the people that are going to be in the space. It's essential. And so I think it's more this ability to think about that. But we are at the place where a periodic table of what do we know and how do you use it? And the architects, designers are artists. They're going to create something different every single time because they're bringing their own lived experience, their own work to it. So I think that's what's great about this field too, is that it's not a cookie cutter. We're not all going to get the same buildings. They're going to be really different, but they're going to be informed through a new kind of evidence that can be used to create and design in new and different ways with all the materials and the wonderful work that Well's doing to make sure that the buildings are safe and healthy. I think those are the things that we want to think about too.
That's fantastic. Thank you. And I know this call could go on for hours. I'm going to boldly suggest we might have another call because a lot of people couldn't get in, at least at the beginning of this one. We might have another one on this topic because it's really obviously very important to a lot of people and it touches everything. And so massive kudos to Heidi for identifying this, writing it, researching it, and holding us accountable for this and really insisting that we take a look at it. Very cutting edge and very, very important. So I'm going to start with Heidi in these last 4 minutes. This is going to be like a lightning round of just one thought, one sentence or two on how you feel this is going to play out in the future. Neurowellness in the future. Heidi?
I'm going to talk about 3 impacts. There's so many
in 30 seconds.
In 30 seconds. If you have a wellness center or yoga studio and you're not incorporating talk about neuroregulation in your classes, change that. You're going to tap into a whole bunch of people that didn't connect with meditation and all this other stuff. They're going to connect with regulating their body and you're going to tap into a new market. If you're in hospitality and you have places where people sleep, address the sleep tech, address the sleep environment. People want so much more. The savvy consumer is expecting the latest science and the latest setting in their hotel rooms. And if you are a neuroscientist or a place like a clinic that's doing interventions for brain health, don't miss this opportunity to go upstream. You have the technology, you have the knowledge. It's not just there to treat the pathologies at the end. There is a huge demand for all of that technology and science to be applied in prevention and lifestyle improvement.
Heidi, thank you so much. So much. And that's a good segue to Meredith. Future brain measurement. One thought.
Yeah. So I think the future of brain measurement and impact is highly, highly personalized with AI and machine learning and sensors that can be tracking what's happening in real time continuously. We should be able to treat things before you have symptoms and optimize the brain in real time using devices like Elemind.
And Susan, one quick thought on neuro wellness and the future?
Oh, goodness.
Is how is it going to change design principles?
Well, I would say if you take care of the moments, the years take care of themselves. And I think we are at a moment where we don't want to survive, we want to thrive. And so if this idea of wanting more than to manage our stress is going to be the human condition that moves us to neuro wellness in all of these spaces, physical spaces and otherwise.
Beth McGroarty, last word on this, and then I'm going to go to Heidi for a little bit of marketing information.
Okay, what to say? I mean, I just think it's going mainstream because people are realizing that the biggest obstacle to their health and sanity isn't willpower, it's nervous system overload. I've been harping on this for 20 years.
Your time has come, Beth.
Grossly underestimated what has happened to us in the 20 years with smartphones. It's why the wellness industry arrived the same year, really blew up the same year. I think it's a really great and unusual space because neuro wellness is a really unique mix of the very lo-fi, the cheap, and the free. Things like somatic approaches like breath work, ice baths, humming, to a whole new category of super high-tech solutions and interventions. So I feel like this is like a true evolution, kind of systems level evolution for the wellness industry. It's really a new category. I think the desire from people on the ground is intense. I think more education is needed for them to understand how to do this and what these different interventions actually do.
Thank you so much. And I want to thank everybody. I think we have QR codes. Is that right, Heidi? A QR code. So the Neuro Wellness Trends is part of a larger trends report. Absolutely fantastic future of wellness. There will be a QR code, I think, popping up on your screen to go ahead and scan that and purchase that. That would be wonderful. It's 10 trends and they're extraordinary, all of them. And also there are two events.
So many hyperlinks and references to case studies.
And companies that you've been hearing about, and there's so much interest in the technology in companies. There's all kinds of interesting links in the report. And then two other events coming up. One we mentioned, the Wellness Real Estate Community Symposium coming up May 12th in New York. A lot of the people that were on this call will be there and talking about all of these topics, including neuro arts and neuro wellness and how that impacts the built environment. And then our 20th anniversary summit in Phuket, Thailand in November. Please come to everything. We'll leave those up for just a moment, but I do want everybody to unmute and give a round of applause to everyone on this call. Thank you so much for your time and expertise and insights. It's been absolutely fantastic. So thank you all so much.
Well done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
you very much.
Presentation. You will all get the recording, the notes, the chat, everything. And we'll see you next time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.